Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called The Monster Duchess and Contract Princess. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! It's tiring to live for others, but that's how it always is for Leslie. She lives her life through pain and suffering just to appease her sister Ellie. Even now, as people are throwing her into the fire, she hears them cheer for her death as a sacrifice to her sister. As Leslie cries and pleads for her life, her family stares down at her with contempt. How dare she try to fight her own fate? An opportunity presents itself to Leslie when the servant takes pity on her. He cannot bear to push a young child into the embers of a burning structure. But hope quickly vanishes when Leslie's father takes matters into his own hands. With a strong push of his cane, Leslie's father shoves his own daughter to her death. He watches as the flames swallow her petite frame. But from within the fire, spirits offer Leslie a helping hand. "You must live," they shout through the flames. One after another, spiritual hands emerge from the thick smoke. They rest their palms on Leslie's back, readying themselves to push her out of the fire. Soon enough, they shove her out of the window, breaking the glass and plummeting her into a long fall over the cliffside. As Leslie is falling, memories of her family's maltreatment resurface in her thoughts. Her mother is always calling her out for the littlest mistakes. Her father is always defending Ellie. Ellie herself despises her. Leslie's mother continually enforces perfection and beauty upon her. It is almost as if they only see her worth when she acts perfect. A grim face of her childhood self reappears before her mind. Her mother is standing with her, but she only looks at Leslie with contempt. Tears escape Leslie's eyes as she continues to fall. There is truly nobody who loves and cherishes her. Slowly, Leslie loses consciousness. But as she drifts off, her thoughts remain only for wanting to live. No matter what pain in her past lingers, she still wants to continue living. Leslie awakes with a throbbing pain in her hands. She didn't think she would survive that fall. Sitting up now, Leslie recalls a traumatic event that transpired. How cruel can her family be that they forsake their own flesh and blood? They watch her burn and fall with no remorse for their actions. Leslie admits to herself that she's scared, but this time she won't allow herself to succumb to despair. She promises herself that this time will be different. Amidst her new resolve, Leslie shifts her attention towards her hands. When she looks down, a black cloud of magic envelops her fingers. A flashback then unfolds the history of black magic and her family. Turns out, long ago in the Empire of Regrettably, noble families possess unique powers of magic. Her family line, the Sperado family, secretly possesses the most powerful magic of controlling the darkness. However, the family is facing a decline in black magic users, ultimately leading to a decline in the Duke's line. When she walks away from her rickety old bed, a dark cloud of magic beckons her. She simply looks back at it and assures that she'll be all right. While sneaking around the home, Leslie hears voices from a room nearby. When she checks it out, to her surprise, it's her own family. What? She's still being held captive even after they tried to kill her? Listening in on their conversation, Leslie finds out that Ellie has awakened the black magic within herself as well. However, Ellie does not know how to properly use her powers. A blank and horrified expression overtakes Leslie's face as she hears what her family is plotting. To her horror, they still plan to use Leslie as a sacrifice to fully awaken Ellie's black magic. Leslie's family believes that her only purpose is to propel Ellie's own abilities. She then laments in agony, remembering that every miserable moment she had to endure was only for the sake of her sister Ellie. However, this time, she has decided to end it all. The next morning, Leslie sets off to venture somewhere outside the premises of her abusive home. Her father, Marquess Sperado, intercepts her before she could leave. But when she does not entertain his verbal demeaning, he lashes out at her. The Marquis scolds Leslie, calling her out for not wanting to help her own family, for not wanting to be a sacrifice for Ellie. Leslie responds that he should be the one to sacrifice himself if it means so much to him. Atta girl, Leslie! Way to bite back! Hearing this, her father motions to grab her, but a dark force repels his attempt. He tries to move again, but this time he finds himself being enveloped and blinded by the dark magic. Leslie pays no mind to the darkness that causes him not to abuse her again. She makes herself scarce, and when she reaches the entryway, Leslie demands that the carriage take her to the temple. After a few violent protests from the servants, Leslie asserts herself, for instance, slapping one of them, surprisingly enough for the servant to follow her orders. Leslie's officially in her can't mess with me era. In the carriage, her thoughts drift to Duchess Salvatore. The Salvatore family is well known for their unsurpassable power, thus earning them the title of monsters. Townsfolk say that the Duchess Salvatore herself possesses a strength distinctively stronger than any of the noble houses. An idea rings in her head. Leslie wonders if she'd be able to persuade the Duchess to help her. Upon arriving at the temple, Leslie finds out that the Duchess did not make an appearance today. It's common knowledge that the Duchess avoids accepting guests, so it isn't all that unusual that her presence at the temple is amiss. If Leslie wants to meet her, then her only chance is the annual Daegi meeting. The yearly Daegi meeting, happening in a mere month or two's time, is one event that the Duchess never misses. If the next sacrifice isn't in half a year, then that's plenty of time for Leslie to meet with the Duchess. Despite not meeting the Duchess, Leslie still wishes to make her visit at the temple productive, so she tries to ask for a copy of the Sperado family's records, thinking if she studies it, then perhaps she's bound to come across answers as to why they want to sacrifice her so badly. Leslie approaches the temple staff to relay her request. To her dismay, they do not easily hand out copies of family records unless their identity is verified. Leslie feels uneasy about the situation. How could she prove she belongs to the Sperado family when she looks nothing like a noble? Her dress looks like rags and her shoes aren't fancy at all. She didn't even possess a simple identity card with her family sigil. Think, Leslie. You can't give up so soon. Suddenly, an idea springs itself from her thoughts. Leslie decides to prove her Sperado affiliation by showing the carriage she came in. Upon seeing the carriage with the Sperado crest, the temple staff immediately believe Leslie. There's only one goal that Leslie wishes to achieve right now. She wants to trace back all the family records of early deaths to find other children who were sacrificed throughout the years. As she scans, she recognizes a pattern for those who became a sacrifice. All those poor children. They never got to live to adulthood. Leslie's breath hitches in her throat as she realizes how morbid these records are. None of them deserve what they were put through. Horrified and disgusted, Leslie vows to avenge all the sacrificed children. Not wanting to read any more of their deaths, she runs back to the carriage in tears. Suddenly, she loses her balance as she makes haste and she slips on the temple floor with a loud thud. To her surprise, a young adolescent man with silver hair helps her up. Leslie gazes into his eyes as he reminds her to be careful. This is probably one of the rare times Leslie had someone express genuine concern for her. Who could that man be? When Leslie arrives back home, the strangest thing befalls her as soon as she exits the carriage. Her sister Ellie came running towards her. As she reaches Leslie, Ellie envelops her in a big embrace. This was enough to perplex Leslie on the spot. So many questions plague Leslie's mind at the moment. Turns out, the Orlando Emperor's son, the prince, is currently visiting the Sperado mansion. He and a crowd of nobles watch as Ellie puts an affectionate display on in front of them. Slither like the snake you are, Ellie. It sickens Leslie to see Ellie act so fake. She scowls at Ellie visibly while still remaining in her embrace. With a violent push, Leslie shoves Ellie away, forcing her to the ground. Leslie's retaliation does not bother Ellie as she uses it to her advantage. Ellie twists Leslie's words, making Leslie sound like a cruel younger sister has no regard for her older sister's concern. This is exactly how Ellie wants it to go. Never try to outtalk a girl with a silver tongue, Leslie. Leslie mischievously grins at Ellie's fake crying stunt. She loudly questions how genuine her sister's concern truly is. Hearing Leslie talk back to her, Ellie could only harbor more contempt towards her younger sister. Trying to perpetuate her affectionate display, Ellie caresses Leslie in front of the prince and the nobles. Leslie does not recoil. Instead, she chooses to one-up Ellie by reminding her of watching idly by as Leslie burns in the flames. Hearing this, Ellie quickly tells her to shut up for fear of being heard. Suddenly, a fearful look displays itself on Ellie's face as she recognizes the dark force that surrounded Leslie. How was it possible for Leslie to possess that much dark power? Leslie finally had enough of Ellie's little spectacle. She moves to enter the mansion, but Ellie grabs her arm to stop her. In doing so, the sleeves on Leslie's clothes rip, revealing her burn marks. Seeing people stare at her burns, Leslie announces that it was Ellie who gave her those. Later that evening, a servant barges into Leslie's attic. She hastily grabs Leslie, saying that she must be punished for the lies she told that afternoon. What lies are you talking about, girl? Definitely no lies there. Leslie angers at the maid's words, and soon a dark force once again emerges from behind her, resembling the flames that once burned her. Angrily and in tears, Leslie yells that it is the whole Sperado household who hurt her. Rhea, the household nanny, holds great pride in raising Ellie to be the prim and proper lady she is now. Hearing Leslie speak ill about Ellie, she threatens to tell the marquess about Leslie's behavior. The audacity of this little girl, huh? Rhea is absolutely enraged already. Leslie pays no mind as Rhea blabbers on with her threats of punishment. She tells Rhea to do it. Tell the marquess or his wife or whoever it is. All Leslie wants is to not be bothered while she slumbered. At this point, Rhea loses her composure and dashes at Leslie with all the intention of punishing her physically. As she nears Leslie, a dark cloud of magic from under the bed wraps itself around Rhea's legs. When Rhea falls to the ground, she quietly blurts out that she was hurting. Suddenly, Ellie enters Leslie's attic in the foulest mood possible. She shouts at Rhea to get out. She does not show any concern for Rhea's hurt legs as she tells her to crawl away if she cannot muster any strength to walk. This girl is something else, really. Ellie closes the door with a loud thud. Angrily, she accuses Leslie of stealing the power that was rightfully hers. Hearing this, Leslie questions how and why all this power was rightfully Ellie's. Beauty and popularity may grace Ellie, but Leslie could see through her true colors. She openly discusses how Ellie and the Sperado family could take such great pride in their wealth and honor when it was built upon the blood of innocent children's sacrifices. Having enough of Ellie, Leslie threatens to show the marquess her own raw power. Ellie's face scrunches in frustration as she realizes that the marquess might cast her aside once he finds out that Leslie possesses great power. As Ellie exits the attic, Leslie quickly tucks herself in bed. All this drama is too much for a child, after all. The next day, Leslie indulges herself in a decent meal for the first time. She disregards the servants' odd looks at her. When her own mother comes to insult her eating habits, Leslie grins when Ellie herself tries to rid her mother from the dining room. What a life. She could get used to this, being served, being feared. Who needed love anyway? Later that day, Leslie pays a visit to the Duchess Salvatore's household. When the servant warns her of how dangerous the Duchess is, her resolve does not waver. From her estate, the Duchess Salvatore eyes Leslie's petite frame. She converses with her butler, Jenna Dorantes, about her family status. Until today, the Duchess did not know a second daughter being born into the Sperado family. Jenna verifies that Leslie is indeed a member of the Sperado household as she recognizes her from the accompanying visit with the Imperial Prince in meeting his betrothed, Lady Ellie. The Duchess continues to eye Leslie from afar, but she does not make a move to welcome her into the estate. A flashback races the Duchess's thoughts as she recalls how the Sperados have always put Ellie on a pedestal. There is little to no mention of their second daughter. A bit strange, isn't it? After a while, the Duchess finally tells Jenna to leave Leslie be. She will soon grow tired and cold, ultimately forcing her to leave the estate's premises. Hence, no need to even utter a formal decline. As Leslie waits outside the estate's gates, her hands begin to tremble from the cold. Soon after, the carriage driver urges her to go back home for fear of the Duke's wrath. Hearing this, Leslie tells the driver to go back without her. After a little convincing, the driver left Leslie alone to wait at the Duchess's estate. Despite the cold, Leslie did not abandon her post of waiting for the Duchess. She already came this far, she might as well push through with it. After a tiring working session, the Duchess finally got up from her desk to retreat. When she passes by her window, she is shocked to see that Leslie is still waiting for her. Albeit freezing and alone, Leslie's resolve softens the Duchess's expression. When Jenna calls the Duchess for dinner, the Duchess expresses her desire to welcome Leslie as a guest. Jenna complies with the Duchess's wishes and fetches Leslie from where she waits. Jenna leads Leslie to a common area and she showers her with hospitality. Leslie, unaccustomed to being treated nicely, does not know how to calm herself at being presented with kind gestures. When the Duchess enters the common area, Leslie gapes in awe at her towering figure. The Duchess sits opposite of Leslie and quickly gets down to business. Reciprocating the Duchess's direct demeanor, Leslie openly tells the Duchess her proposal of wanting to be adopted. A profound look of disbelief presents itself in the Duchess's expression at hearing Leslie's request. She's never heard of someone asking for such a thing. Usually, ladies across the land would offer their hand in marriage to her sons just to be part of the Salvatore family, but adoption? This was something new. Getting invested into this whole conversation, the Duchess asks Leslie why she would adopt her. Leslie quickly replies that by doing so, the Duchess would obtain what she has always wanted, and additionally, she would possess whatever power Leslie currently had. Mustering all her might, Leslie shows the Duchess her magical abilities to prove her point. With one stretch of Leslie's arm, a cloud of darkness overpowers the entire estate. The Duchess alarms herself at Leslie's raw power, but she is quick to catch on to her amusement. Unfazed and sitting laid back, the Duchess exclaims her awe at Leslie being a black saint. Despite her interest in Leslie, the Duchess still has much to find out about her. She asks Leslie of the intentions of her request. Being honest to her fullest extent, Leslie admits that she wants protection away from a life of abuse. Hearing this, the Duchess sympathizes with Leslie, but she is not entirely convinced. Hearing the Duchess demand more to her reasoning, Leslie finally comes clean of wanting to destroy the Sperado family. Unbothered by Leslie's confession, the Duchess continues to interrogate Leslie throughout their meeting. The Duchess is taking a liking to Leslie already, as she fits the qualifications of someone she can rely on and train. However, her wit and power isn't enough to sway the Duchess. She needs to put her to the test. A test that, for the Duchess, truly measured a person's resolve. The Duchess asks Leslie to tell her what she knows of her. To this, Leslie replies with the common sayings that her strength is unmatched and that half of her face is coated in scales. The Duchess laughs at this and proceeds to take off her mask. As the Duchess takes off her mask, she anticipates a recoiled, fearful, and horrified reaction from Leslie. However, she is soon taken aback when Leslie's reaction is that of genuine concern for her. The scar that covers half of the Duchess's face, Leslie is all too familiar with it. Their interaction is soon interrupted when the Duchess's son enters the room. A genuine look of curiosity reflects itself onto the Duchess's son. With no further ado, he asks his mother of the little girl Leslie in the room with them. Without a second thought, the Duchess answers her son by saying that she is her daughter. Hearing this, Leslie partially chokes on her food and looks at the Duchess in disbelief. The Duchess soon asks for her son to introduce himself to Leslie. Granting his mother's wishes, Berthrion Lehen Salvatore briefly introduces himself to Leslie as the Lenche Night Order's commander. Even though he radiates a fearsome aura, his name still becomes babied when his mother calls him Beth. With Beth's serious introduction, the servants expect Leslie to cry at any moment. However, they are soon proven wrong when Leslie gracefully introduces herself in response to Beth. I mean, she's been through so many more terrifying experiences. The servants watch in awe as Leslie and Beth interacted to break the ice. Soon after, the Duchess mentions that later on Leslie would be introduced to her second son, Entei. That night, for the first time, Leslie feels at ease with being around people. To her, all of this feels like a dream. It feels surreal to experience genuine kindness after years of torment and abuse at the hands of her real family. A flashback to older times unfolds from memory. 1,000 years after the Empire was formed, a group called the Ete was formed. A woman knight who closely resembled the Duchess is seen picking up bodies from destroyed villages. She carries the bodies and asks her fellow knights to bury them before moving on to the next site. The memory fades and the morning sun rises in the Salvatore estate. Leslie wakes up in a good mood after spending a night at the Salvatore estate. A servant helps to prepare Leslie before she joins the Duchess for breakfast. She treats Leslie with so much kindness that Leslie's heart warms at her kind gestures. When Leslie joins the Duchess, she asks of Bethrion's whereabouts. Perhaps she found it odd that no one else is joining her and the Duchess for breakfast. The Duchess compels Leslie to continue eating, as Beth probably would not join them that morning. While at breakfast, the Duchess discusses matters relating to Leslie's adoption. She expresses that the process will be difficult as Leslie is from another noble family. Nevertheless, she should trust the Duchess and give her about a month to settle her adoption. The Duchess also makes it known to Leslie that she should keep her power hidden from everyone else. Aside from Ellie and the Duchess, nobody else must know of the power she possesses for fear that they may want to acquire it for their own gain. Despite Leslie's great faith in the Duchess, she still grims her face upon realizing the severity of her situation. Seeing Leslie react that way, the Duchess reassures her not to worry. After all, Leslie has her now, right? That in itself should make a difference. As Leslie gets inside the carriage to go home, the Duchess watches her. Momentarily, the Duchess notices Bethrion's presence. He finishes his training quite late for a morning practice. As she instructs him to get closer to Leslie since she will be his sister soon, she reminisces back to when Sai was thrilled with her first pregnancy, wishing it was a girl. Moreover, they already decided to name their baby Elizabeth and even decorated the room back then. Presently, the Duchess explains to her son that the Sperado marquess already knew that she sent people out to the orphanage before, but thanks to that, she was able to meet Leslie. The marquess is probably not aware that the daughter he abandoned is so calm and mature and has already planned out things in her little head. Bethrion then takes responsibility for taking care of things. Meanwhile, Ellie catches Leslie, who just arrived back from the Sperado marquess's house. She welcomes her with a lecture, which causes them to fight. Shortly, their mother interrupts them and immediately sides with Ellie, the favorite daughter, without knowing the whole story. Because of Leslie's attitude, her mother punishes her. She has never been treated as their child since she was born, which means that she is just an object. However, she doesn't want to be their daughter either. I mean, who would want to be a daughter of such horrible people? Ugh. Truthfully, Leslie wants her monstrous family to be devoured by the darkness. But she restrains herself because the Sperados deserve a greater punishment. She must endure it a little more. She then proceeds to go inside her room to escape from her mother, and she cries in her bed as she thinks about getting revenge. Oh, poor baby. Oh. On the other hand, Daryl complains to the Marquise about her attitude. Both of them dislike Leslie because they only think of her as a sacrificial lamb. Also, she mentions her using magic, which makes him curious. Actually, the Sperado family members have this destiny wherein the children born with golden hair and green eyes are destined to stand on top and are powerful, while the next child born with silver hair is a sacrificial lamb. Their power can be transferred to the firstborn. However, after the Marquise finds out that Leslie's powers have been awakened, he gets happy thinking about the benefits he could get from that. He is certain that the second darkness user has awakened. The next day, Leslie finds it weird that the servants are now being nice to her. She notices that the Marquise has been strict with the servants, explaining their sudden change of treatment towards her. With that, she then decides to eat together with her family to investigate what is happening. Shortly, Ellie arrives at the dining table with Leslie taking her seat, which makes her furious. Just as she is about to pull her hair, their father arrives. He scolds Ellie for being rude to her sister. All of a sudden, the Marquis starts being nice to her. He apologizes for all the terrible things he did to her before and tells her that he deeply regrets them. It's his duty as her father to make sure she's happy. However, she doesn't have any plans to forgive him. Just recently, he hurt her, so she doesn't believe any of his attempts to be nice to her. That's right, Les. They don't deserve forgiveness, honey. She then walks away, even before they are able to eat. Darkness is very discreet. It's not flashy, and it lurks quietly, like it doesn't exist. Leslie concludes that he already found out about her secret, which is why he's being nice to her. If she doesn't use her power, no one will know if she has it or not, although those who have the same power can sense it. Not long after, Ellie follows her and makes an attempt to attack her, but the dark magic hinders her. Meanwhile, the Marquis starts to throw tantrums because of Leslie's arrogant attitude. He then orders the servant to talk well to her. Actually, the servant notices that Leslie is afraid of fire, which makes him smirk. It seems like he is planning something. Ugh, what now? The Marquis plans to set Leslie on fire. He is certain that she will definitely use her power to try and survive. He can then confirm how strong her powers are and how much she is worth. However, he doesn't know how to do it. On top of that, Leslie has been very cautious recently. Shortly, a butler arrives to pass a message from the marquess. The marquess wants him to come with her to the temple the next day, but he refuses. Momentarily, he retracts his answer as he realizes he can use it to proceed with his plan. The next day, the servant tells Leslie that they will be going to the temple that day, and miraculously, she agrees quickly. For her, she doesn't care wherever she goes, as long as it is not in the mansion. With that, she will be able to breathe without worry. Later that day, she was riding alone in the carriage. It's a bit suspicious, but she feels really comfortable that her family is not around. Moreover, it's only been a few days, but she wants to hurry back to the Duchess already. Meanwhile, the rest of the Sperados family is riding together inside the carriage. They have a quick stop because the Marquis passes something to the men with axes. After that, he orders them to go back home, never mind going to the temple. The marquess starts to get tired of him because of his unreasonable acts lately. However, he assures her that everything will go well, and he's doing it for her and Ellie. In addition, the axes are just preventative measures in case of a fire. Momentarily, Ellie concludes what her father's plan is. On the other hand, Leslie's carriage suddenly stops in the middle of nowhere. She tries to get out, but she's trapped inside. Suddenly, the carriage is on fire. She then finds out that her father organized the whole thing to confirm her powers. Just when she starts to accept her death, Bethrion comes to save her. How despicable that her own father tried to kill her! What a monster! On the other hand, actually, it was Ellie who informed him earlier about the incident anonymously. After Bethrion saved Leslie from the fire, a group of men with axes arrived and tried to take her. However, he threatens those men for what they did to the child and for insulting him and his knights. After they find out Bethrion's identity, they all run away quickly. He then lets them go away since Leslie's safety is more important. One of the knights notices that he seems to know the child, so he tells them that she is his sister. Later that night, Leslie wakes up from a bad dream. The Duchess immediately comes near her. She gives her something to drink so she can sleep better. Leslie is afraid to go to sleep because then the same dream might appear again. She then mentions their contract relationship, a promise that the Duchess has to keep. In accordance with her contract, the Duchess assures her that she will always be by her side. Shortly, Leslie feels reassured knowing that the Duchess will stay by her side until she falls asleep. Not long after, Bethrion calls his mother. The priest had already checked his burns earlier and healed them instantly. The Duchess expresses her frustration toward the Marquis Sperado. She never thought that he would be capable of lighting a carriage on fire, especially with his own daughter inside. Recalling what her grandparents said before, the second child of the Sperado family typically passes away unusually early in the past. Moreover, there is no need for them to care about other people's family matters. However, Leslie's desperation stuck with her. The Duchess then decides to pay the Marquis a visit right away. Meanwhile, the Marquis is very furious and is destroying the house. He scolds his men for losing Leslie. While the ruckus is ongoing, Ellie witnesses everything. Ellie finds out that Leslie is with the Salvatores, and a part of her doesn't want Leslie to come back. After a while, the Duchess Salvatore arrives at their place. Ellie then goes to her formally to greet her. Out of the blue, the Duchess asks about Ellie's age. She thinks that the eldest Sperado daughter is quite big for her age. That's maybe because she isn't your daughter. Marquis Sperado immediately apologizes for making the Duchess wait. They begin to talk about the incident with her daughter shortly. He tries to make excuses for what happened, but she doesn't believe him. She then asks him without hesitation if Leslie is really his daughter. While waiting for the Marquis to show up earlier, Ellie toured her around their mansion. She notices that their house seems like everything is for one child only, which is Ellie. There is nothing for Leslie around the mansion, like she didn't even exist. The Duchess finds it weird, so she starts to doubt the Marquis. Momentarily, she mentions that her grandfather told her before about all the second children of the Sperado family who died at an early age. After what she said, the Marquis's reaction proves that he is guilty. Admittedly, she doesn't know much. However, she is certain that he only raised Leslie for something else other than a daughter, and that he attempted to kill her countless times before. The Marquis starts to get defensive, so he keeps spouting nonsense. He then threatens the Duchess with a duel if she doesn't bring Leslie back to him, but she doesn't feel threatened at all. In fact, she is looking forward to that day as she tells him that she will break his bones with her bare hands. With that, the Marquis decides to put her on trial. Yes, now that's queen behavior. Meanwhile, back at Salvatore's house, Leslie wakes up thinking that everything was just a bad dream. Momentarily, she immediately pretends to be asleep as she hears Bethrion's voice from outside the room. He then comes inside the room to check on her along with his father. She then hears an unfamiliar voice, so she peeks to see who it is. When the old man's face comes into sight, she feels startled, so she swiftly runs to Bethrion. Shortly, he assures Leslie that she is safe because the man is his father. Afterward, she introduces herself. Actually, she's not scared of him. Rather, she's just not used to a grown man trying to please her. Serene Delpa Salvatore, Acella Salvatore's husband, tries to be friendly with her, so she feels a bit relaxed now. After introducing himself to Leslie, Serene welcomes her to their home. Later on, the three of them ate together. Serene and Bethrion are just watching her enjoy the food. Serene offers her more food, however, Bethrion restrains him. Although his intentions are good since he wants Leslie to eat good food after being asleep for 4 days, she's only allowed to eat nutritious ones. She couldn't believe that she'd been asleep for that long. Moreover, she finds out what the Marquis did to get her back after Serene accidentally says a curse word in front of her. Just like a normal child, she is curious about a lot of things, especially what she hears from adults. Bethrion kicks out his father outside the dining hall. It's a punishment for being careless in front of the child after saying foul words, even though he didn't mean to. Leslie then starts asking a lot of questions, so Bethrion decides to explain everything from the start. Oh, he is such older brother material. Recently, the Sperado Marquis came to Salvatore's place to get Leslie back. After the Duchess's visit to the Marquis, he was convinced that he wouldn't be able to get Leslie back. Thus, he caused a ruckus at the front door, yelling to get back his daughter. They came when the Duchess was home alone, so they got overconfident, but they chose the wrong opponent. The Duchess was able to defeat all of them by herself. Leslie thinks that the scary Marquis is nothing now that she left their horrible house. Before she heads back to rest, Bethrion gives her medicine first. Afterward, Leslie is taken to her own room, which she will be using from now on. She gets excited, as it is obvious that she loves the room. Shortly, Madele, who will be taking care of her from now on, introduces herself. Later that night, Serene pampers his wife after she had a long day dealing with odd people. The Duchess listens to him be excited about Leslie. He wants her to be their daughter. However, making Leslie their legal daughter may bring some trouble. In addition, the Marquess is quickly erasing all evidence that he ever abused Leslie. Since the evidence is within their house, the Duchess can't do much. He's probably doing all that while preparing to send the Duchess to trial. With that, say Rainey gets mad. Momentarily, the Duchess gives a fair warning to her husband to be careful of the words he says in front of Leslie. The next morning, the Salvatore family, including Leslie, ate breakfast together. It seems like they have to buy another chair for her because she can't quite reach the table. However, there's no need for that since she will make sure to grow up quickly. Leslie is spoiled by the Salvatore couple as they decide to buy things for her. Shortly, she requests to go downtown since she hasn't been there before. With that, the Duchess even encourages her to go sightseeing with Bethrion. Later that day, Bethrion and Leslie observe Ruente, their second brother, talking to Conrad Alpe Altera, the second eldest son of Duke Altera. When Leslie sees Conrad's golden eyes, she instantly remembers meeting him before. Based on what Leslie knows, the Salvatores and the Alteras, the Empire's most influential forces, are on bad terms. However, Bethrion corrects her. Moreover, he informs her that Conrad is actually a paladin. After a short while, Ruente and Conrad head to where Bethrion and Leslie are. Ruente has no idea who Leslie is, so he asks who she is without even greeting her first. Bethrion then scolds him for his lack of manners. Momentarily, Conrad and Leslie introduce themselves to each other. She didn't mention her last name since she didn't like it. Moreover, she wants to call herself Leslie Salvatore. Conrad is not staying for too long because he still has some work to do, so he excuses himself shortly. Now, the three Salvatore siblings are left alone. Ruente then asks again about Leslie, so Bethrion introduces her to him as their little sister, which leaves him surprised. Leslie is eating pancakes alone at the dining table. It's her first time seeing how pretty-looking pancakes are, so she's really happy. However, she feels kind of lonely. Bethrion had work that day, so he wasn't able to be with her, but he promises that he will take her downtown the next day. Leslie restrains herself from feeling lonely, especially because she has yet to be officially adopted as a Salvatore. On top of that, she is just a girl who is there because of a contract. She shrugs her thoughts off as Ruente arrives shortly. He greets her quite aggressively, but Leslie stays calm while explaining the reason for her presence at Salvatore's place. Ruente notices that she seems to be used to dealing with aggressive emotions. Momentarily, she leaves him alone in the dining room. He couldn't believe what's happening, especially with a Sperado member being a part of their family. Later that night, Leslie looked outside her room window. She then asks Medell about hooking fingers when making a promise and how it's different from a contract. Earlier, Bethrion hooked their pinkies when he made a promise to her. Medell then enlightens her as she answers Leslie's questions. Later on, Leslie requests to look outside a bit more when Medell is about to close the windows up since it's getting cold. With that, she offers to get her some hot chocolate to warm her up. On the way to get a drink, the Duchess runs into Medell, so she asks her about Leslie since she is her personal maid. Medell then shares her observations about how Leslie has more knowledge of adult matters than things of her age. On top of acting strange, Leslie seems too mature for her age. The Duchess just tells Medell that she has her own reasons, so she should treat her well. Leslie is already sleeping when Medell comes back with her hot drink. She then carried her to bed so she could sleep well. The next morning, Leslie wakes up very early because she's too excited to go downtown that day. She finishes preparing shortly with Medell's help. Bethrion is already waiting for her as she runs toward him in a fur ball coat. She's so squishy! I want to hug her! The coat is a big hit for her since it's Ruente's from when he was young. She is actually that small, which makes her really cute. Leslie wants to grow tall like the Duchess, so Bethrion assures her that she will eventually grow when she's old enough. On the way downtown, Medell notices how much Leslie enjoys the outdoors as she looks out the window with a huge smile. For her, every time she looks outside, it is less suffocating. Medell then remembers the conversation she had with the other maid last night. They notice Leslie's strange behavior since she is too mature for a little kid. Moreover, the Duchess ordered them to treat her well. Presently, they are almost there, and Leslie is feeling a bit hungry, so they decide to eat first before going shopping. Afterward, they are now shopping for clothes for Leslie. Medell enumerates the orders for the shopkeeper. She mentions a lot, but Leslie likes the blue dress the most, which fits her perfectly. While Medell and Bethrion scroll through the catalog to choose more clothes for Leslie, she decides to go to the washroom. She asks someone to guide her along the way. Just when she's about to go inside, Ellie grabs her out of the blue. Is she stalking our Leslie? Ellie drags Leslie inside the washroom. She pushes her to the wall as she expresses her anger and frustration with her little sister's presence in her favorite store. The reason she's so angry is because someone like Leslie dares to come to the same store as her. Back when she was still living in the Sperado mansion, Ellie never allowed her to walk anywhere near her room. It seems like the marquess is not doing well since Ellie is shopping by herself early in the morning. Normally, they shop together and spend the rest of the day at leisure. Now that the rumors about the Sperado family have already spread, things are different. Leslie concludes that Ellie decided to come home early in the morning so that no one was around. With that, she accuses her of planning everything, including breaking their own father's arm. In the end, the unwanted daughter gets blamed again for the things she didn't do. She's so mean to her little sister. Momentarily, Leslie realizes that if it weren't for Ellie, she might have spent her entire life in the Sperado family, yearning for their love. She is quite thankful for her because of that. When she's about to walk away, Ellie stops her. The Sperado family did nothing but cause Leslie a lot of trauma. Moreover, Ellie is only concerned about herself, but she is putting all the blame on her sister. Shortly after, Leslie finally walks away and returns to Bethrion. When she gets back, Bethrion apologizes for what Ruenti did to her in the dining room. Even though she was threatened by him, she didn't feel scared at all. For her, if he truly hates Leslie, the look in his eyes would have been hostile, so she doesn't make it a big deal. After that, they decide to go look around other stores while they finish measuring her clothes. They proceed to go to a toy shop, which makes Leslie excited. Bethrion tells her to choose anything she wants, but she is hesitant. If she doesn't choose one, then he doesn't have any choice but to buy her everything. He's indeed a good brother to Leslie. How sweet! Attempting to coax Leslie into making a purchase, Bethrion suggests buying everything, hinting that Salvatore's financial standing might become the town gossip if she doesn't. It's giving brother vibes. Leslie shyly points at the black bunny. Next up, pastries. Watching Leslie enjoy her food with bright smiles, Bethrion wonders what exactly the Sperado marquess did to Leslie, that such simple things made this young child this happy. Medell, Leslie's maid, suggests that Leslie try the cookie with the hot chocolate. Instead of dipping or sipping in the hot chocolate, the maid finds Leslie putting the snowman-shaped cookie floating in the hot chocolate. Leslie finds it pretty, so excitedly shows it to Bethrion, only to find it in ruins, cracked and sinking. Night falls, and Leslie remains embarrassed by the cookie mishap. The image of the cookie sinking in such a depressing way flashes back at her. She makes Medell promise to keep what happened a secret. After Medell left the room, Leslie slowly got out of bed carrying her newly bought bunny. She talks to the darkness, saying that it looks like her bunny as they are both black. Leslie thinks that what a relief that she was born with the power of darkness. She promises that the end of the Sperado marquess shall be a present for those who helped her. The next day, the Duchess announces that Ruenti will be teaching Leslie. A rather displeased face is seen in Ruenti. Ruenti may not look like it, but he's a rather famous magician. Leslie will learn the basics of wielding a sword, but she needs to gain more stamina first, and then move on to learn proper etiquette, dance, and other minor things. After the meal, desserts are served, a new addition to the Salvatores' routine. Bethrion gazes at the hot chocolate and cookie dessert, a reminder of the embarrassing incident. Medell tells Leslie to try putting the cookie on top again, just like how she did, leaving Bethrion and Leslie awkward. Leslie attempts once more to place the cookie on the hot chocolate, expecting it to sink just like the previous day. She hesitates, nearly giving up, but to her surprise, the snowman-shaped cookie rests atop the liquid. It's as if the snowman is riding a boat. Little did Leslie know Medell, the chef, and other servants collaborated to create this beautifully adorned hot chocolate. Their meticulous efforts involved 64 attempts and 20 cups of hot chocolate to provide Miss Leslie with a perfect moment. These servants are MVP. So sweet of them. Amidst the praises for Leslie, Ruenti perceives the entire situation as madness, thinking everyone has gone crazy these last few days. Ruenti appears in front of Leslie as he will be teaching Leslie about magic. He tries to act indifferent towards her, telling Leslie he doesn't have a choice to teach her because it's his mother's task to him. The mysteries surrounding the power of darkness remain veiled, concealed by the Sperados for almost a millennium. Ruenti hints at the similarity between Leslie's power and regular magic, suggesting that the methods of controlling should be similar. Intent on challenging Leslie, Ruenti presents her with a stack of books, some rarely mentioned even in the upper levels of the academy. From archaic language to the continent's history, he labels this as basics. Ruenti's treatment of Leslie stems from Sperados joining their family. Just thinking about the disgusting things the Sperados did to hold them back infuriates Ruenti. But it's just like the others completely forgot about it and are all excited, even his brother. Well, if you just open your eyes and look at Leslie's cute eyes, you'd understand why. Anticipating complaints from Leslie, Ruente is surprised to find her more well-read than most adults, having devoured every book he mentioned. While telling her extensive knowledge to Ruente, Leslie glances at him nervous, gripping into her own dress, thinking she must still be lacking. She remembers the reason why she's read all those books: the slap, the pain, and the heartbreaks her tutor gives every time a question goes unanswered. She is told that her ignorance will be her sister's ignorance, which will bring shame to the Sperado family. Her past life was dictated by familial expectations. Although this isn't the Sperado mansion and Ruente isn't that tutor, Leslie can't shake off her worries. Ruente's indifferent demeanor shifts to admiration as he marvels at how a 12-year-old could comprehend Nairokia's theories. He seeks validation, asking for her favorite passage, verifying her grasp of Nairokia's work, an underrated philosopher's theories known to few. Ruente is so captivated by her knowledge. At her age, she knows archaic and holy language, and even history up to the birth of the Fourth Empire. And if she knows this much, there's no doubt people will brand her as a prodigy. Ruente is very excited as he envisions the potential of such a prodigious child. But a sudden realization brings him back to his guarded self. Despite Leslie's undeniable charm, she's a Sperado, a fact he sternly reminds himself of. He cannot afford to be swayed by her innocence like others, as he considers himself the sharpest Salvatore tasked with safeguarding their home. However, her preference for Nairokia's theories frustrates Ruente. He finds himself agreeing with every point she presents, challenging his own principles. Leslie tells him she's very happy to have met Ruente, and that she has never talked to anyone about Nairokia before like this, looking forward to be taught by him. Since Leslie already knows about theories, Ruente wants to move on to some real practice. Ruente asks Leslie to use her power like how she used it the first time she spoke with the Duchess, but this time, instead of the whole mansion, only the room they're in. In an instant flick, Leslie covers the room with her powers, amazing Ruente, and realizes this is the powers that help maintain the Sperado family for thousands of years. Impressed, Ruente acknowledges Leslie's capabilities, understanding why his mother, the Duchess, adopted her. He challenges her to master power control, emphasizing the potential repercussions of mishandling any power. Leslie struggles with power control, a common issue among individuals with formidable abilities. Ruente patiently explains while gently patting Leslie's hair, guiding her through their training. Leslie concentrates on mastering 1 log out of 6. Halting her efforts, Ruente observes Leslie having conquered 4 out of 6 logs, an accomplishment that even an average magician might struggle with after a year or 2 of practice. Ruente reassures Leslie of her exceptional progress, affectionately caressing her with a tender gaze. The source of all Leslie's problems is her stamina, whether she eats and sleeps right to improve her training. Meanwhile, in a basement somewhere, the Duchess with Bethrion is interrogating a servant who leaked information about the Duchess eyeing the orphanage. After a while of threatening, the servant tries to tell them about Sperado when suddenly his mouth spills blood, causing him to die. Oh no! Jenna, the butler, imagines that Parlon might have been promised nobility in exchange for his betrayal of the Salvatore family. Convinced that his moral compass is distorted and lacking sharpness, Jenna believes Parlon fell victim to manipulation without realizing it. Despite his suffering, he never sought medical help, a testament to his optimism that he'd attain nobility. A knight raises suspicions about Marquess Sperado's involvement after Parlon's mention of the name. However, Beth dismisses the notion, affirming that someone stronger than Marquess Sperado is behind the incident. Meanwhile, Ruente and Leslie are getting closer. Leslie asks him why the royals and Duchess Salvatore get along. Ruente explains to Leslie that the Salvatore family existed long before the empire was established. The royal family thinks that the Salvatore family might be superior to them, so they didn't like them. The royal family's crests have a snake with 2 heads. One head has the sun in its mouth, while the other head holds the moon. The sun and moon represents the sky, which means that the royal family is the sky. They are arrogant enough to call themselves the sky. The personalities don't exactly help either, especially his mother, who's not the type of person who easily bows to other people. A realization shocks Leslie. The rumors about the Salvatore being monsters were spread by the Salvatore family themselves. Ruente jokes about their supposed monstrous traits. Leslie disagrees, emphasizing the family's kindness to her. Ruente playfully teases, saying they're only kind to her. Their chat is interrupted by the Duchess's summon. Ruente notices Leslie still addressing him formally, despite her upcoming status as a Salvatore. He asks her to call him something else, prompting Leslie to playfully call him Brother Ruente. As they head to the Duchess's office, Ruente informs Leslie about the Duchess inviting Conrad, a member of the royal family, due to Leslie's power. Ruente arrives at the office of the Duchess. He tells his mother how Leslie is very intelligent, a genius rather, similar to the seniors at the academy. A true genius in philosophy but lacking in other subjects, and her etiquette is quite particular. She does what a maid would do sometimes. She has no common sense and lacks so much pride that it is evident that she's been mistreated her entire life. Hey, easy with the insults! Ruente tells the Duchess how he wants Conrad to protect her, concerned about how and when her powers will run rampant or not, or the power is too strong but the owner is too fragile. Divine powers can heal wounds, but can also soothe powers that are rampant, even Ruente and the Duchess can't do. It would be hard to stay calm knowing how powerful Leslie's power is. They could even be on the same skill level as Conrad. On the other hand, the Duchess tells Leslie that the Marquess Sperado will be taking her to court, saying the Duchess kidnapped Leslie to learn more about their family's power and other accusations towards the Duchess in order to get Leslie back. Using Leslie as a witness is not possible because the Marquess spread the rumors that Leslie is mentally challenged, a weak child who's lived in her imagination since she was young. Seriously? He's getting worse and worse! Also, according to the law, every child must be under a guardian makes Leslie tremble in fear knowing that if that is the case, she will be back in that disgusting place. But the Duchess puts her at ease as she assures her she will give her the Salvatore name and that the only thing Leslie's going to worry about is what kind of bed and furniture Leslie's going to put in her new room and what cookie she's going to put in her hot cocoa tomorrow. But then, the Duchess gently asks her for a confirmation if the early deaths of all the second and third children in the Sperado family and Marquess Sperado's intent to kill Leslie are related. That's when Leslie bursts into tears, revealing the truth that she was born to be a sacrifice. Leslie reveals why Marquess Sperado attempted to kill her and the underlying cause behind the premature deaths of the second and third children in the Sperado family. She believes that the departed children's souls bestowed their powers upon her for the purpose of seeking revenge. The agony she felt when exposed to fire, she assumes, might have been exponentially greater for those children. However, the Duchess raises doubts about whether these deceased children truly desired Leslie to wield this power for vengeance. Meanwhile, the Duchess took the liberty of arranging an etiquette teacher. Shuela Avon Tireum. That's a wild name right there. The Duchess informs them that Conrad Altera will be instructing Leslie in theology, prompting objections from Duke Serene and Beth, though they hold no sway in the decision. Ruente, meanwhile, will serve as her tutor for all other subjects. Calling Ruente a brother causes a stir at the table. Duke Serene and Beth are too jealous of the intimateness. Leslie, regardless of being hesitant to call them brother, father, and most importantly mother, even before having their name, Leslie tries going back and forth, but she can't do it with the Duchess. Later that day, Conrad came for their theology session over tea and sweets. Why does this look more like a date? Calm yourself, Leslie. Leslie doesn't know what to say and how she should talk to Conrad, afraid of making the slightest mistake. Conrad eases her nervousness by telling her they're just exchanging greetings with each other. He compliments her like how Ruente praises her for her knowledge, and for a 12-year-old, the praises are truly deserved. What a talker! Leslie's blushing, and quite frankly, she isn't the only one. They share how Nyrokia contributed to their friendship with Ruente. Conrad introduces Leslie to an underrated history writer, Emeria, poorly evaluated because she's female and a commoner. The conversation turned into admiring how kind the Salvatores are very far from how society sees them as monsters. The Duke gives off a strong and scary aura, but he's actually very kind. Beth looks stern, but in reality, he's very gentle. Ruente is very knowledgeable, and the Duchess Salvatore is an amazing person. Leslie requests that they have their classes in the estate if that's not uncomfortable for him. Speaking of uncomfortable, Conrad is just about to ask Leslie if they could change the destination of their classes. Somewhere maybe out from someone's dagger stares like now. Conrad describes her as a very joyful person who doesn't match the Salvatore family, being polite, pale, and harmless, like a pure bunny amongst dark, ferocious beasts. OMG, really? But he's literally a priest! God! Conrad asks the butler to bring him some of Emeria's books and to make a list of all the stores that sell desserts, a request the butler doesn't expect because he doesn't enjoy sweet things. Conrad thinks that she has her own predicaments. The first time he saw her in the temple, she was crying and wearing clothes that were out of season and didn't fit with the hallways the noble-looking people. Despite that, he still wants to get closer to her, wondering what expression she will give him the next time they meet. A grumpy Duke hands a letter he found to the Duchess, seemingly still pissed off with the idea of Conrad Altera being the teacher of Leslie. The Duchess explains why they need someone who can calm her power. A power not innate from birth, but due to an unfortunate event that made this mere 12-year-old seek revenge for the children of Sperados for thousands of years. Big flaming power. Duke Cyrene instills his dislike of the Alteras, having been acting suspiciously lately. While listening, the Duchess entrusts the newly stamped letter to the Duke for him to deliver it to the important person for the upcoming trial as soon as possible. I wonder who it is. The Duke cutely accepts the letter, submitting to his wife's smiles. How to tame rough-looking guys 101. Before he leaves, he tells the Duchess how he wants Leslie to be able to look back and only remember the happy times. Aww, Dad of the Year award, please! Meanwhile, Marquis Sperado is seen by Rabon, seemingly worried about the arms of the Marquise injured during their encounter with the Duchess Salvatore. It doesn't sound as if Rabon is particularly worried in the Marquise's ears. Rabon bid his farewell, leaving Marquis swinging his cane everywhere because of anger. Thinking of the faces that caused all of this humiliation, the Duchess and Leslie angers him more. He believes that a daughter should listen to her father's words as if they were God's words. If things had gone as he had planned, Leslie would have been married to a poor mercenary and starved for the rest of her miserable life. Like, are you insane? Are you hearing yourself? The thing that the Marquise is still holding on to is the child protection clause to win the trial, as well as Ellie's fiancé, the prince. He sees there's no way that he can lose if he just plays his card right. It could even result in the downfall of the Salvatores. In order to come up with a plan for disciplining Leslie going forward, Marquise examined a book. He made a chain. Not a perfect solution, but the chain can supposedly restrain the darkness. If he wraps Leslie's body with this, then she won't be able to use her powers. Such morbid ideas! How can he call himself a father? His evil thoughts were interrupted by a call for him informing that Her Majesty the Queen Dowager was waiting for his arrival. Queen Dowager Medea seems to like the Marquise. Honestly, I don't know why either. To that, she offers to do something in return for always lifting her spirits. Marquise took the chance to plead a noble trial, the story of how the Duchess Salvatore kidnapped the Marquise's second daughter. We hope this man is on top of the FBI's most wanted list. Such a manipulator! The Marquise successfully persuades the Queen Dowager to initiate a noble trial for Duchess Salvatore. A noble trial in the Empire of Regrettably necessitates the Emperor's written decree known as the Death Sentence of Honor. Should one transgression surface during this trial, one risks losing their esteemed rank and being reduced to commoner status. The Salvatores, a prestigious family, might escape complete rank deprivation, yet a fall from such a lofty position would be profoundly humiliating. The impending familial tie between the Queen Dowager and Marquis Sperado compels her involvement in the plight of an in-law, despite Leslie enduring far greater hardships. Shameless people, just shameless. When the Marquis leaves, thrilled that his wish has been realized, the Queen Dowager hides her crucial part in the beginning of this mayhem. Queen Dowager was the one who leaked some of the information so that the Marquis of Sperado could disrupt the Salvatore Duchess. But his daughter was stolen instead. She did not know he was this stupid. At least we can agree on that, Medea. Mocking the egotistical Marquis, who only cares about his family, can't seem to understand his proposition and believes he can overcome the Salvatores. Her Majesty now worries that she might have chosen the wrong fiancé for Orlando, but is relieved knowing that engagements can easily be broken. She tells the maid to tell His Majesty that she wishes to have breakfast with him tomorrow. Even if he does hate the Queen Dowager, he is still the Emperor and must show courtesy, so for his mother, he will at the very least open a noble trial. The Majesty is curious who this child the two families are fighting over. She asks for her name, and after knowing, she feels bad. To give that child name Leslie, meaning a happy and peaceful family, opposite to what is happening right now, is saddening. Her Majesty is excited about what will happen. For the Salvatore Duchess to choose her, it must mean she is special. Meanwhile, in the Salvatore estate, Leslie begins etiquette lessons with her teacher, Shuela Avon Tyriam. Though Leslie gracefully bows in typical fashion, a gesture reserved for those of higher rank, her habit stems from enduring years of inhumane treatment. Viscountess Tyriam acknowledges Leslie's significance in the Empire, mentioning that only 4 ladies wield more power than she does. As Leslie's tutoring progresses, another teacher becomes enamored with her by the session's end. After an extensive etiquette class, Leslie receives a fluffy pink cotton, momentarily mistaking it for the pink hair of her eccentric teacher, only to realize it's actually a cotton candy. Intrigued by this rare sight in Regrettably, Leslie is captivated by the melted sugar treat. So cute! As the day concludes peacefully, Leslie contemplates the unusual tranquility amidst the upcoming trial, questioning whether such moments should exist. Days pass without updates from the Duchess regarding the trial, leaving Leslie concerned. In a conversation with Ruente, she recalls her struggles to address the Duchess as mother the previous day, worrying it may have disappointed her. Ruente clarifies that Leslie's deep respect for the Duchess hindered her from addressing her comfortably. Recognizing the Duchess's role in rescuing her from a troubled past, warding off the Marquise and safeguarding her under the Salvatore name, Ruente assures Leslie that the Duchess understands. Leslie vows to address everyone comfortably once she officially becomes a Salvatore, sealing it with a pinky swear. Known as the Shield, the Duchess is a crucial guardian of the Empire, and Leslie, too, will step into a significant role. Amidst her thoughts, Leslie connects the dots, realizing the Duke Sariane's absence and the Duchess' departure for the palace are likely tied to the impending trial. Feeling a tinge of guilt for potentially causing them trouble and worrying for the Duchess, Leslie grapples with her emotions. Cheer up, Leslie. The Duchess won't be easily taken down. When Ruente mentions that the Duke is probably holding the Emperor by the neck by then, Leslie panics. After all, doing such a thing to His Majesty is blasphemous, a treasonous act. Ruente explains that it's just a term they use whenever their mother is meeting with the Emperor, since it happened before. When she and the Emperor were younger, they were in the middle of a war and the Emperor was bothering her, so out of frustration, she grabbed him by the collar. How fearsome! The Duke's bravery is truly awesome. He then advises her not to mention such a term outside of their home, for she may get in trouble. After that, they continue to train her powers. He presents her with pieces of wood again, and this time, she destroys all but one with ease. A perfect show of precision. Way to go, Leslie! She happily informs Ruente that she has indeed been practicing. Her brother pats her head fondly before taking on a new set of targets, narrower and definitely more difficult to hit. Meanwhile, the Duchess arrives to meet with the Emperor. He greets her warmly, welcoming his old friend. When it's just the two of them, the Emperor worriedly asks her what exactly is she planning. He doesn't understand why she will take a child from the Sperado. Now they have to deal with the fact that everyone is pressuring him to hold a noble's trial. He especially worries about her reputation. He tries to convince her to return the Marquise's daughter, especially since the rumors about her are getting worse and worse. The Duchess can only smirk at that, used to being called a monster at this point. She tells him to proceed with the trial, and she reminds him that rumors and trials can hardly affect the Salvatores. The Emperor has no choice but to concede. The Duchess then hands him her defense, informing him how Marquis Sperado has been abusing his youngest daughter. The Emperor is horrified at the thought that the Marquis would do such a thing to his own child. Calling his name sternly, she asks him if he knew about it. The poor Emperor quickly denies in alarm, swearing that if he knew, then he would not have allowed his son to be engaged with the Marquise's daughter. Azela can only smile fondly at her friend, seeing as he still remains as so soft-hearted as ever. The two of them discuss the law that required every child to live with their parents and how the Marquise will most likely evoke this right. He questions why out of all the children in the Empire, she chose to adopt this particular child. With a fond look on her face, the Duchess declares that Leslie is cute, listing the child's qualities. The Emperor realizes just how attached the Duchess is to her new daughter. He has never seen her compliment anyone other than Serene. He then suggests a betrothal into the imperial family, insisting that Leslie can be empress someday. The Duchess downright rejects the idea, claiming that marriage is for the children to decide for themselves. Wiping away faux tears, the Emperor comments that the Duchess is being cold. I just love their relationship. I hope the two of them can remain close friends till the end. Meanwhile, the two-faced Marquis Sperado finally receives the confirmation of the noble's trial. He even plans to throw Leslie in the basement where he will chain her up and stop her from using her power. This guy is just pure evil, isn't he? Meanwhile, his wife despairs that she will have to get involved in such a shameful affair, angry that the Marquise is not considering her feelings at all. Ellie, on the other hand, knows that they can't afford to lose the trial. She will continue to lose face if this happens. Prince Arendo might even break off their engagement. All he wants is for Leslie to be gone. This family is truly made up of the most despicable people there are. Back in the Salvatore's estate, Leslie has a nightmare once again, and this time the Duchess is involved. In her dreams, the Duchess is being sentenced to death because of her. She wakes up in tears, convincing herself that everything is fine. The next day, Leslie is frustrated that everyone is hiding the details of the trial from her. Not knowing only makes her worry even more. Suddenly, Conrad enters the room. They settle down, and Conrad offers they have tea before theology class. He notices that Leslie looks tired, so he serves her a calming tea as well as a plate of eclairs. He then tells her that she can always confide in him since it helps reduce the stress. Instantly, she tells him what's bothering her. She stands up and even grabs his hand, asking him to tell her any news about the trial. Surprisingly, Conrad is silenced, and when prompted to say something, he requests that she let go of his hand. Leslie jerks her hand away, guilty that she may have made him uncomfortable. Embarrassed, Conrad quickly explains that he is just not used to being around girls that often. The two of them end up apologizing back and forth to one another. They are so adorable. Conrad then gives her more information regarding the noble's trial. Being summoned to such a trial disgraces a person instantly. He even cited an occasion where a person who lost the trial took his own life out of shame. He, however, is confident that the Duchess of Salvatore will do no such thing. No one can tarnish her honor, but she just worries that no one is telling her anything. She keeps on thinking that everyone is going through hardships because of her. Tears start pouring from her eyes as she feels sorry for everyone. Conrad approaches her, comforting her by saying that she is not to blame. Gently, he lays a hand on her shoulder and hands her a handkerchief. He then suggests that she be open with her family and that her anxiety is causing her nightmares. With his encouragement, Leslie is determined to see the Duchess and tell her about her troubles. Leslie smiles brightly, thanking Conrad for his words. He stares at her for a second before asking to take her hand. Leslie is confused, but she complies when he reassures her. Their hands soon begin glowing, much to her fascination. She realizes that this is divine power. He explains that this will help her sleep better and help with the nightmares. Leslie thanks him sincerely, not knowing how to repay him for his kindness. Conrad merely smiles, telling her to just return the favor someday. Later on, the servants as well as the butler are all worried for the little miss, for she refuses to go to bed. Leslie insists on staying in the Duchess's office to wait for her. No matter how much they coax her to rest, she remains resolute. She has to speak with the Duchess that day, otherwise she will lose her courage to do so. When the Duchess arrives, Leslie instantly goes to hug her. She asks her to tell her about the trial. Seeing her so determined, the Duchess informs her that their family hasn't said much to her about the matter because they are not too worried about it. They are more than prepared for it. The Duchess does not want her to take the witness stand at all. Leslie protests instantly. After all, she is the victim. But the Duchess assures her that they will not lose the case. This will be the start of the fall of the Sperados. On the day of the trial, Ruente is waiting for her since the rest of their family has already left. Her brother informs her that he will plead her case since it is still too soon for their mother to speak up. Ruente swears that he won't go down, and Leslie declares that they will succeed. Meanwhile, the despicable Marquis Sperado is thinking about his impending victory, especially the downfall of Duchess Salvatore. They arrive at the Imperial Palace, and Leslie thinks back to the time when she came to this place as Ellie's handmaiden. She accidentally spilled tea on the prince. Although he did not react badly at all, she was still scolded and beaten upon returning home. She was a fool for wanting to receive love from the people who treated her badly. She returns to reality as Ruente offers to help her down the carriage, asking if she is nervous. With a smile, she tells him that she is not. Bethrion instantly spots them and approaches them. When he smiles at his sister, the knights with him are astonished by such a peculiar sight. They don't see the stoic and strict man smile often after all. Which is a shame, because he's drop-dead gorgeous when he smiles. Wah! Beth eventually has to get going, for he still has to do a lap around the grounds, so he'll see them both inside later. One of the knights gives Leslie a friendly wave. She wonders why he looks so familiar. They enter the court, and Leslie can't help but notice that it looks more like an arena for combat. Suddenly, Serene calls out to her, ever so enthusiastically, while the Duchess smiles fondly in her direction. Serene quickly gives her a crushing hug, only to be chastised for forgetting his strength. He instantly sulks like a kid, so the Duchess promises him that they can catch up with her later on. Ruente then excuses himself to check on the witness. However, when he steps outside, he runs into Ellie Sperado. The girl has the audacity to tell him to back out of the trial and to return her beloved sister. Ruente refuses, of course, even mocking the fact that the word beloved is clearly synonymous with punching bag in the Sperado family. Ellie threatens that they'll be disgraced. Ruente is unaffected by her words, merely walking past her. But before leaving, he reminds her of her place since their house can never be equal to the Salvatores. The moment everyone is present, the Emperor arrives not long after. He gives both parties a last chance to back out, but the Duchess and the Marquise are determined, so he makes them swear an oath to tell the truth. And so, the trial officially begins. The Marquise is allowed to speak first, so the despicable guy instantly begins his slanderous tirade, giving baseless accusations one after another. He states that the Duchess took his sick and weak daughter away. The Marquise even produces a fake letter that's allegedly sent to him by the Duchess along with Leslie's so-called hair that was used to threaten him. What a pathological liar! The Marquise then casually mentions the carriage fire accident and shamelessly pins the blame on Duchess Salvatore. He even calls on a witness who used to be a servant from House Salvatore. The servant downright lies that he was ordered to pour oil onto the Marquise's carriage. He claims that he disobeyed, but the servant who he was with was killed. He even lies that he asks another servant to check on Leslie, only for the servant to discover that Ruente was doing something vile to her. The servant he claims to have seen this was Farron Athen, and he was supposedly been found dead without any of his teeth left. The Marquise instantly claims that Ruente has done something to make his daughter believe that this is her home. Leslie can't hold back any longer, and she shouts in protest. As she cries, she recalls all the horrible things that had been done to her by the Marquise. But to her dismay, her words are discredited. When someone questions why Leslie does not have a second name, the Marquise continues his string of lies. He convinces everyone that it is for the sake of his wife that he did not risk bringing Leslie to the temple on account of her poor health. In order to prove the so-called spell that Ruente supposedly cast on Leslie, the Marquise asks a high priest to step forward. Leslie is asked to take the priest's hand. The priest uses divine power, and to Leslie's horror, an excruciating pain courses through her body. The Marquise deems this as proof, expecting the Emperor to do something. However, the Emperor insists that they listen to both parties. Leslie is allowed to take a break in a solitary room. There, she can't help but despair about the things that occurred so far. She worries that if the trial goes wrong, the Duchess will suffer the consequences. Conrad happens to find her on the floor as she weeps. He tries to comfort her, but she quickly grabs his hand, begging him to use divine power on her. When he does, the same thing happens to her, worrying her even more. She begins crying again, deeming herself a useless child. Fortunately, dear Conrad is there to cheer her up. He assures her that the Duchess will surely win the trial. He then tells her that he will testify as well, even though it's against the law to interfere during a trial. He will use his family name. He tells her not to worry, for he is there to assist her. Aw, such a knight in shining armor! Back in court, it is Ruente's turn to speak. First, he discredits the accusation regarding the carriage fire, stating that it is practically impossible for a carriage to be soaked in oil for such a short time and not go up in flames in an instant. Despite the Marquise's malicious interference, Ruente continues to speak, declaring that the Marquise is the one who truly wants to endanger his daughter. To prove this, Ruente calls on a former servant of House Sperado as a witness. The witness declares that he was ordered to set Leslie's carriage on fire. Another witness, this time one of the knights, presents himself as a witness. He is one of the knights who helped Bethrion rescue Leslie from that carriage. He clearly details what happened that day. Naturally, the Marquise declares the testimonies as lies, but then Ruente shows everyone a visual magic stone that was created by the magician's mansion and the temple. It clearly shows what happened before Leslie's carriage was set on fire. The Marquise can only grit his teeth out of anger as Ruente challenges him to rebut such compelling evidence. Ruente ruthlessly continues, telling everyone that the most likely reason for the Marquise's horrid act is because of his nature. To prove this, Ruente calls upon a new witness. This time, he's not a servant or a knight, but one of noble blood. The witness enters, and everyone is confused to see that he is not dressed like a noble at all. In fact, he looked more like a miner from the West. When the witness removes his hat, everyone is shocked. He looks exactly like the Marquise, only with brown hair. He introduces himself as the Marquise's younger brother, Theron Sperado. The Marquise is astounded, for he believed both of his brothers to be dead. When his wife tries to ask questions, he harshly pushes her in front of everyone. His wife does not put up with this, instantly going hysterical as he continues his false apologies. The Emperor grants his wife leaves, and she seems upset. Theron then continues his testimony. He tells everyone how his brother has always had a cruel disposition. He tells them how he still bears the mark he received when he was whipped and locked in the attic without food and water. He then reveals that he and his second brother were also placed in a carriage one day to be taken somewhere far away. However, an accident occurred, killing everyone but him. That is how he was able to escape, and he survived thanks to his current wife. He never wanted to return to this hellish place, but he did because he heard that his niece was suffering the same way. He then implores the Emperor to not let Leslie return to the Marquise, for it will doom her. The people begin gossiping about the Marquise, but he does not back down. He talks about the spell that's been cast on Leslie once again. Confident that the High Priest's testimony will not be refuted, the arrogant Marquise even challenges the Duchess to stand. Calmly, the Duchess tells him that the moment she stands, he'll get in trouble. What a boss! The Marquise is confident that Ruente won't be able to come up with anyone, and the Emperor will not have a choice but to continue the trial in 3 days. Due to the law, he will no doubt end up bringing Leslie back to his estate. Unfortunately for him, Conrad has chosen this moment to swoop in and save Leslie. When he explains that he wants to use divine power on Leslie, the Marquise instantly allows him, thinking that the same effect will happen to her. Hesitantly, Leslie approaches Conrad. He whispers for her to trust him, and she declares that she does. When he uses his power, Leslie braces herself, but she feels no pain. Conrad addresses the room, saying that there are rare cases where people can be too sensitive to the High Priest's power. The Emperor then has had enough. He declares that Leslie definitely went to the Salvatores willingly in order to survive, and the jury agrees with him. The Marquise ends up on his knees, overwhelmed by the loss. Unexpectedly, Leslie approaches him. She tells him that this is the last day he can pretend to be her loving father, for she's no longer Leslie Sperado. The Marquise screams hysterically, attempting to grab her. Fortunately, the Duchess grabs his hand, holding it in the most painful way possible. Ellie demands that the Duchess let go of her father, but when the Duchess turns her attention to her, she trembles like a leaf. She then screams that she's the prince's fiancé. The Duchess is unfazed, and she points out that Leslie is now her daughter. She will not tolerate any rudeness towards her daughter, so the father-daughter combo from hell should be mindful. You go, mother. Show them that they can no longer mess with little Leslie. As they walk away, Leslie cries in the Duchess's arms, apologizing for putting her through this. The Duchess reminds her that parents are supposed to do anything for their children. All she wants is for her to grow quickly and be big and strong. She asks her to call Sai, Enthe, and Beth more familiarly from then on, but only if she's comfortable. Leslie happily hugs her, finally calling the Duchess Mother. Meanwhile, Ruente confronts Conrad, asking him how he managed to pull that off. He reveals that even though people who are too weak to take divine powers truly exist, Leslie is not one of them. He actually redirected Leslie's pain to his own body. He basically suffered extreme pain without blinking an eyelash, all so he could save Leslie. Ruente is confused as to why he would do such a thing. Before Conrad can answer him, the Duchess and Leslie come to them. Leslie thanks Conrad for his help, and he smiles brightly at her, telling her that it is his pleasure to help. Before going home, they'll make a stop at the temple. Their entire family comically shares a carriage despite the fact that there is another one, all so they can ride with Leslie. When they arrive, Leslie is directed towards the servants of God. Despite her confusion, she obeys. One of the god's servants begins muttering in an unknown language. After the short ritual, she kneels before Leslie, telling her that the name of God's blessing is Shuya. She realizes that she has finally been given her second name. She is now Leslie Shuya Salvatore. There's nothing that makes Leslie happier than receiving her beautiful, blessed name. As she runs over to hug the Duchess, everyone looks at her proudly as she confidently introduces herself as part of the Salvatore family. Finally! We are so proud of you, baby girl! Meanwhile, the Empress grows even more disappointed in Marquis Sperado for failing to execute her plan, despite laying out all the pieces for him to win the noble trial easily. When her accomplice asks how Duchess Salvatore disproved her testimony, Afiel explains that Duke Altera's son utilized his divine power. Admitting to playing a trick on Leslie, she acknowledges the Duke's son's intervention. She then reveals how Conrad cheated. Even so, the Empress refuses to break off the engagement between the prince and Ellie, stating that it would be difficult to find someone else that could benefit them. However, she is curious as to why the Duchess suddenly decides to adopt a daughter, specifically choosing the daughter of Marquis Sperado. Suspecting that the Duchess may be hiding something, she orders Afiel to investigate further. Jeez, leave them out of your silly little games! Meanwhile, in the House of Altera, Conrad receives a sharp slap from his father for defying the royal family. Conrad argues that he can't allow the reputation of the Empire's most crucial guardian to be tarnished. Despite his defense, the Duke is deeply disappointed in him. Outside the Duke's office, Gwyn hands him a cold towel to soothe his pain, comforting him how the Duke's temper has gotten worse due to the recent storm that sank their trading ships. Just then, Conrad's brother warmly greets him and advises him not to overwork himself, believing Conrad's lie that the pain stemmed from training. Seeing his brother's beaming smile reminds Conrad of Leslie, igniting a desire to help her protect her smile. That night, Leslie finally introduces herself to everyone in the duchy, basking in the shower of praise from the people. Before she retires to bed, she happily tosses and turns, reveling in her escape from the Sperado family. Just then, she notices a letter left behind by her uncle Taryn. The letter contains an instruction that if she ever finds herself back with the Sperados, there's a small hole between the 13th barrel for her escape. It's clear that Taryn truly admires his niece, even wanting to testify once more if needed. He also admired Leslie for using her own strength to break free from Marquis Sperado, rather than relying on luck. Taryn earnestly wished for Leslie's happiness now that she has found a home with the Salvatores. With tears streaming down her face, Leslie promises that she will indeed find happiness. I'm not crying. You guys are. The next day, Medell informs Leslie that her name is already inscribed in the Salvatore family book, lifting her spirits. Upon entering the dining hall, Leslie is stunned by the array of festive foods awaiting her, surrounded by eager faces. As she sits between Beth and the Duchess, Ruente offers her pancakes. Sai pats his head as their father can't help but to feel proud of his son who finally knows how to share. Later, Jenna guides Leslie to her new room. Unsure of how to decorate it, Leslie asks Jenna to decide, but Jenna encourages her to take her time. Just then, Leslie is summoned to the Duchess's office. Meanwhile, the Duchess is investigating Ellie and what the Empress is planning. However, as the guardian of the Empire, she only needs to do her job. When Leslie enters, memories flood her mind of the first time she sat on the same couch and met the Duchess. The Duchess explains Leslie's responsibilities as a Salvatore, which disheartens Leslie as she recalls their contract. According to the agreement, she must leave when she turns 18. Deep down, Leslie wants to renegotiate the terms of the contract. They're good people, Leslie. I'm sure they're going to love and care for you as long as they live. However, the Duchess wants her to enter the Temple on the Blessed as her daughter instead. Long ago, before the Rucardius Empire was founded, a terrifying contagious illness swept across the world. Each day brought a new mountain of corpses, and the living screamed in agony, gripped by horror. Unable to bear the suffering any longer, God descended to Earth and traveled tirelessly, gathering all the illnesses into a small box. To aid in the recovery from the devastation, God selected 10 girls and 10 boys, bestowing upon them divine power and instructing them to heal the afflicted. These individuals, blessed with God's power, became the first priests in history, spreading out across the globe to save lives. It took them 8 years to complete their journey and return to their starting point. The survivors of the epidemic began calling the day when God granted salvation the Blessed Day, commemorating it every 8 years with a grand festival. The selection process for the 20 candidates requires choosing from the highest noble bloodlines. Given that Leslie is the daughter of the Empire's sole duke, she is naturally among the first choices. And upon entering the selection, the Duchess wants her to get a role as Arabella. Arabella is one of the 20 chosen first priests, but they say she personally met with God and received his power. The rest of the 19 priests had received their power through Arabella. In 4 years' time, the chosen Arabella will be a girl, and at the end of winter, there will be a test to determine the final candidates. Leslie, determined to pass so she can change their contract, eagerly responds with a resounding yes. Meanwhile, Arlindo pressures Ellie to take on the role of Arabella as instructed by the Emperor, framing it as her last chance to salvage the engagement. Failure to comply would result in the annulment of the engagement. The time when Ellie became the candidate was because her family had donated and she had the imperial family's recommendation. I bet she can't do anything without relying on your wealth and power. Ellie puts on a sobbing expression, questioning Arlindo if he really intends to cast her aside once she fails. Arlindo doesn't hesitate to confirm, reminding her that their engagement is merely political. Despite this, it becomes evident that Ellie harbors genuine feelings for Arlindo, regardless of whether he ascends to the throne or not. Nevertheless, Orlando firmly warns her that this is her final and last chance before leaving. A day later, Ellie is frustrated why she has to learn a lot of things to pass. She bitterly reflects that if only Leslie hadn't escaped from the fire that day, her family wouldn't be in such a mess. Driven by her anger and desperation, Ellie approaches her father and shockingly suggests a plan to burn Leslie to death. Dare to harm her and the Salvatores will haunt you even to the afterlife. Blaming Leslie for surviving their previous attempt to kill her, Ellie suggests sacrificing Leslie once again so that she can claim the power of darkness for herself. Ellie is driven by greed, believing that this power will enable her to restore her family's reputation with the imperial family. In her plan, she instructs her father to suppress Leslie's powers using the chains. I do hope they know who they're up against. Meanwhile, Leslie is amazed to witness her mother's skills during the knight's training, showing no mercy. As the Duchess introduces Leslie to everyone, the people are charmed by her cuteness, eagerly wanting to introduce themselves one by one. Expecting to start her training with a weapon, Leslie is surprised when the Duchess orders her to run 20 laps around the entire training grounds instead. Exhausted after the 10th lap, Leslie falls to her knees. Hart, the leader of the Knights, approaches and offers her a glass of water. When Hart asks if Leslie aspires to be like the Duchess, Leslie responds affirmatively. However, Hart cautions her, explaining that the Salvatores are renowned for their extraordinary abilities, often surpassing what is considered possible for ordinary people. Hart worries that Leslie might get hurt trying to imitate her mother, especially in her heart. Though dubbed swordmasters, no true swordmasters have emerged from the Salvatore family because they possess powers far surpassing those of ordinary swordsmen. Acela Benkin Salvatore, the Duchess, is exceptional, skilled in both magic and swordsmanship. Such a rare combination for a person to possess. And so, Hart reminds Leslie to consider the kind of person she wants to become. Despite the admiration the Duchess once received, it often turned to envy when people realized they couldn't match her prowess. The scar on her right cheek serves as a reminder of such envy. I can't imagine how hurt she was, yet she remained strong until now. Still, Leslie remains positive, swearing to never become like those people. Hart is surprised that she is rather optimistic, but Leslie can tell if someone hates her or is just pretending to care. It is an instinct she developed living in the Sperado household. Despite his harsh manner of speech, she understands that Hart is genuinely worried about her. Days later, a letter arrives, sparking excitement within Leslie. She had always been curious about the feeling of receiving a letter meant just for her. I feel so proud of her. She truly deserves everything. As Leslie opens a letter, she finds Conrad's explanation for why they must postpone their theology lessons. Although she longs to share her blessed name with him, she hesitates due to the circumstances. However, encouraged by the servants, Leslie decides to write a reply. With their help, she crafts her first ever letter, promising to reveal her blessed name when they meet again. Conrad is delighted upon receiving Leslie's letter, thrilled that she can now say her name with pride. When Duke Altera asks about the letter, Conrad lies, claiming it's from the temple. Satisfied, the Duke dismisses the matter, mentioning his late return. Conrad assures Gwyn that he's just fine and that it's just because of the storm, a harsh one that was unable to shake even his father. He doesn't deserve this. How long will he have to endure such treatment? In the outskirts of the capital, where the nobles usually gather, Marquess Sperado has been quite the talk of the town. The Duke is quite displeased as to why that person chose such a cheap place as their meeting location. Upon entering the room, he immediately recognizes the Empress's voice and firmly reminds her of his previous stance on refusing further meetings. He declines to engage in conversation, emphasizing that he has come solely to request an end to sending letters. The Duke knows that she's hiding something very dangerous, so he turns around to walk away. But before he can reach the exit, the Empress attempts to undermine his resolve, questioning whether he can tolerate someone holding authority over him. The previous Archduke Altera was the twin brother of the Emperor. Due to a mistake, he could not rise to the throne. However, the Emperor was kind enough to give him the title of Archduke. Thinking of that greedy royal blood running through his veins will never allow him to be satisfied with his current position. The Empress offers him equal authority as the Emperor. Although his voice is shaking, the Duke refuses her offer. And so the Empress tries a different tactic. Suella, the Archduchess, is suffering from a contagious disease, and recently her letters have been coming less and less frequently. If he helps her, then she can return the favor. It's such a tempting offer. I wonder what the Duke will do. In her room, Leslie diligently studies, determined not to disappoint the Duchess, believing it's all part of their contract. Suddenly, her nose starts to bleed onto the paper. Still, she continues to study despite that. During breakfast, Cy affectionately watches his daughter enjoying the sweets he provided, lost in thoughts of refurbishing the entire 4th floor as Leslie's room. However, his thoughts are interrupted when Ruente calls out to Leslie in panic due to her nosebleed. Cy rushes outside as Leslie attempts to remove the stain from her dress with water. The Duchess intervenes, emphasizing that her dress is inconsequential compared to her health. Soon after, Cy returns with Gilo, the doctor, who promptly examines Leslie. The doctor determines that she's exhausted. This is so relatable. I know we all get nosebleeds from being overworked too. When questioned, Leslie admits that she sleeps right before the sun rises. Ruente immediately orders Medell to remove all the lanterns and candles from her room. Cy also commands that the study room be locked at bedtime and forbids Leslie from entering. Lastly, Cy orders all parchment and ink to be removed from her room, along with the entire desk. The Duchess believes Leslie doesn't need to study, but Leslie pleads with her mother not to take away her desk, parchment, and ink, as she needs them to write letters to Conrad. Cy becomes even angrier upon learning that his daughter has been writing letters to Conrad. The Duchess intervenes, flicking Cy's forehead and instructing the servants to leave the desk and letters. I swear, this couple isn't just only about being cool, but they have a cute side too. Leslie is then forced to take a break from her studies and training. Cy notices her boredom and takes her along with him to the Imperial Palace. There, Leslie greets everyone with a radiant smile, leaving them flustered by her cuteness. She introduces herself and expresses gratitude for being saved from the carriage accident and for the witness support during the noble trial. As a token of appreciation, she presents a gift that delights everyone. Since Cy has important meetings, he assigns Pelon to escort Leslie around the palace. As Pelon tries to entertain Leslie with portraits of the first Emperor and the first Duke Salvatore, Ellie notices Leslie's presence. However, this time, Leslie turns away. Ellie provokes Leslie, who points out how Ellie holds her head up high despite her lower status. Leslie calls her insane and refuses to engage further, asserting her authority as one of the highest ladies in the Empire. When Ellie pulls her arm, Leslie confronts her, criticizing her disrespect. Leslie insists she's not showing off, but merely exercising her authority. She pushes Ellie away, insisting she set an appointment if she wishes to speak further, and pointing out Ellie's lack of basic etiquette. Ellie, gritting her teeth, retaliates by reminding Leslie that despite her new status as a Salvatore, she still carries the blood of those whom she claims were murderers. How can she be this cruel? Ugh, she really has no shame. Ellie keeps humiliating her, even calling her fake. Says the fake one herself. That night, Cy reports to her mother about what happened and apologizes for his absence. The Duchess feels relieved after hearing that Leslie's just been fine. What troubles her is how the marquess are able to make a move. Although the fee was worth 3 years of the Sperado family's income, it's quite suspicious how he stood back up quite quickly. Jenna then reveals that the marquess asked them to postpone the payment until the trading ship arrives by the start of spring. It's not that far from the deadline for the compensation, so the Duchess wonders why he would choose such an odd time to delay the payment. Also, the Sperado estate has been busy lately. There's really something fishy going on here. Suddenly, Leslie walks up to her mother and greets her as the Duchess carries her. Leslie asks for a picnic that she sees in the books. The book said that if something bad happens, the best thing to do is replace that memory with a happy one. She needs a happy memory, so she wants to go on a picnic. When she loses a grip on her toy, Cy catches it, apologizing for not taking good care of her and promises to show her around the Imperial Palace next time. That night, the Duchess carries her back to her room and gently advises her to sleep. To her surprise, Leslie kisses her cheek and wishes her a good night. However, in the early hours of the morning, Leslie awakens from a troubling dream. She realizes that Ellie's provocations are intended to manipulate her into doing what she wants. She needs to be careful since she doesn't know what they're planning. Such a smart girl! The shadows console her, but when she moves closer to close the open door, she sees Cy and the other knights, asking them if she can join the morning practice. In the training ground, Leslie asks for Hart's advice on what to do if someone he doesn't like follows him around. Hart then advises her to learn the Salvatore way, which means that she can do whatever she wants. Also, her past doesn't matter even if she's not the same blood as her adoptive parents. Hart further explains that blood isn't important, but the way she lives. In the temple, Leslie asks Cy if she may be able to see Conrad, to which he positively replies. However, she's taken aback by the bustling crowd on prayer day, wondering if they'll make it to the prayer hall in time. As they step forward, the crowd effortlessly parts to make way for them. Even the Duchess's attitude toward the temple priest don't display much enthusiasm. Just then, the Duchess proudly introduces Leslie to everyone present, declaring her as her daughter for all to know. Of course! Who wouldn't be proud to have such a cute little daughter like her? As they head inside, Leslie remembers the time she stood at the same spot a few months ago, praying that she wouldn't make a mistake, that her mother would allow her to eat delicious foods, and that her whole family would stop hitting her. This time, she offers prayers of gratitude to God for letting her meet her new family and for allowing her to be truly loved. As she wanders through the temple in search of Conrad, she is interrupted by Saraya, one of Ellie's friends, who approaches with a mocking expression. It's giving me a tell me who your friends are and I will tell you who you are vibe. As Conrad takes a break, he notices Leslie surrounded by Saraya and her cohorts. Concerned for her safety, he prepares to intervene but is taken aback by Leslie's unexpected response. Leslie boldly asserts that the true culprit is the marquess, so as the victim, she refuses to feel ashamed if rumors circulate about her mistreatment. She confronts Saraya, pointing out that Saraya should be the one held accountable for her silence after being bribed. Realizing Saraya's attempt to blackmail her by keeping silent about her situation, Leslie questions the depth of Saraya's contempt for the Salvatore family and herself to resort to such manipulation. Show her what you got, Leslie! Upon hearing the Salvatore name, Saraya immediately bows her head and apologizes. However, Leslie is more eager to report this matter to her mother once she gets home. That's right, let the adults discipline the young. As Conrad turns away, Leslie feels a sense of pride wash over her, having taken Hart's advice to heart. Just then, Conrad approaches as if by chance and informs her that the area is off limits. Leslie wants to seize the moment to share her full name with him, but she hesitates, unsure how to open the subject. Conrad then offers to guide her to the main area as the carriage is prepared to depart. In a moment of being carried away by her habit at home, Leslie reaches for his arm, but quickly pulls away, feeling a sudden awkwardness. As they are about to part, Leslie takes a deep breath, and with a beaming smile, she reveals her full name to Conrad. As their carriage pulls away, Conrad watches her with happiness, realizing that she's not just fragile and delicate, but also stronger and more confident than he can imagine. And somehow, this brings such a loving smile to his face. Leslie enters the dining area like a ray of sunshine like she usually does, but is surprised by the tense atmosphere that surrounds her family. She doesn't even see her father around. Her mother greets her pleasantly nonetheless, but then she is surprised when she hands her a letter. It is from House Lordaeron, and it's a marriage proposal. Absolutely ridiculous! Who would send a 12-year-old a marriage proposal? This sentiment is clearly shared by our little girl's family. Rowente is even more enraged that the man offering the engagement is 25 years old. He swears he will break the man's neck for being such a lunatic. Even the maids are incensed by the idea. Meanwhile, the usually calm and collected Bethrion is quietly seething and even ends up crushing the spoon he's holding. Suddenly, her father enters the room with an axe, ready to strike the one audacious enough to send such a letter. Leslie is terrified by how the men in her family are acting, so she clings to her mother. The Duke then makes the rowdy men stop since they are scaring their precious Leslie. He assures them that there will be no engagement. The Duke tells her that she has to prepare for similar offers in the future. Some might even propose to her in person, so she better avoid getting out cute reactions in case they interpret it as an agreement. The rest of her family warns her to be careful and to not trust easily. They even encourage her to kick any weirdos in the knee. Aw, they are so protective of their little princess. They tell her that a person will only be good enough for her if he is strong like her father, taller than Bethrion, and smarter than Rowente. Leslie is instantly discouraged, questioning if even such a person exists. The Duke, seeing her so down, tells her that only charming cuteness is what matters. Later on, Leslie is informed by the Duchess that the date for Arabella's candidacy has been set. The test will be done far from their home. Despite the difficulty of this year's exam, the Duchess is confident that her daughter will pass. She then learns the reason Ellie managed to pass the exam. The Duchess explains that those who donate an enormous amount of money and have a recommendation from the royal house are waived from the first test. But this time around, Ellie won't have any of those. Leslie is quiet for some time. When she finally speaks, she asks her mother if she truly married her father because he is cute. Laughing fondly, the Duchess answers that she did. The Duchess recalls that Leslie once said that she wanted to get married one day, so she asks her why is that. Leslie answers that she's heard that one has to be married in order to be happy. The Duchess is quick to answer that she actually doesn't have to. She doesn't have to get married just because others tell her to. Leslie is confused since her old nanny Rue once told her that a woman's happiness can only come from marriage. Wow, what a backwards sort of thinking. Leslie asks her mother if she would have stayed single if she hadn't met her father. The Duchess confirms this, stating that she has never thought of marriage as something necessary. Yes, Queen! Gosh, I want to be like her too! Meanwhile, back in the Sperado mansion, Rue is throwing a temper tantrum. She now has to do the chores that are not meant for her. She even blames Leslie for what she's going through. The other servants even tell her that they think she's lucky since the old nanny is the only one who is closest to Leslie, which means that she can easily be taken in by the Salvatores. After all, the servants' condition in that household is 10 times better than what they're in. The butler then tells the nanny that the marquess wants to see her. When she arrives at the office, the father-daughter duo from hell is waiting for her. They then ask her if there was someone who could possibly have been close to Leslie other than her. At first, the nanny insists that there is no one else other than her who is close to Leslie, but upon their badgering insistence, she remembers one maid who was fired for giving Leslie bread and jam. The two Sperados are satisfied with her answer and dismiss her afterward. Rue then figures that she can make use of all of these. Why would she stay in this tiny mansion when the Salvatores would be thankful to her for treating Leslie kindly all those years? This person is delusional. Back with the Salvatores, Leslie is dressed in her training outfit as she greets everyone. They are ecstatic to see their little sunshine, especially her father. When she mentions wanting to go to town, her father orders Hart to assign some guards for her. Bethrion comments on how healthy she is now. Leslie tells him how she hopes to be taller than him someday. Like any good brother, Beth teases her, telling her that he will be growing as well. Upset, Leslie runs to her father, who hoists her up to his shoulders so she can be taller than everybody. Leslie giggles with happiness as her father runs around with her on his shoulder. Leslie, along with her maid and 2 of the knights, are strolling through town. She decides to buy a handkerchief for men. Her companions figure that she's buying gifts for her father and brothers. She ends up choosing a plain one meant to be embroidered by hand. When they leave the shop, her mind is so preoccupied that she accidentally bumps into someone. The lady she crashed into apologizes as she stooped down to pick up the fruits she had dropped. Leslie helps her, but when she looks up, the lady in front of her recognizes her. At first, she is apprehensive by the stranger's recognition, but then the lady tells her that she used to be her maid, Emroa, and that she is the one who gave her bread once. I have a bad feeling about this. The lady begins to pull back, thinking that Leslie does not recognize her. So Leslie quickly stops her, holding her hands and telling her how sorry she was that she was fired. With tears in her eyes, she thanks the lady for giving her delicious bread. They end up eating at a restaurant where they catch up with each other. She learns that Emroa now has a husband and a baby, and she is now the owner of a small restaurant. It's small, and it is near the Shenlif Temple. Leslie recalls that the candidacy exam will be held there, so she enthusiastically asks if she can visit her restaurant, wanting to see the baby. Emroa is hesitant, but she agrees. However, she insists that the lady bring lots of people to protect her. That is not suspicious at all. Something is about to go down, and it is making me nervous. Leslie and Conrad are having tea as they discuss where he will be going. He is headed to the Temple of Shilref for guard duty. Leslie then asks him what exactly the first priest did. He explains that they are supposed to support the high priest during the ceremony. However, only Arabella will enter the innermost area of the temple. Only the high priest and Arabella are allowed in for a single day each year. This place supposedly contains Ephealtes, the epidemic sealed by God himself. It is sealed in a box with a brooch attached to it. This brooch is known to have been used by Arabella. During the Day of Blessing, a ritual is performed to secure the seal. This means that they reseal it every 8 years. Later on, Leslie uses her greatest power, her adorableness, to convince the Duchess to allow her to visit Emroa's restaurant when she goes to the temple. With the help of Jenna, the Duchess is eventually convinced. Leslie is so ecstatic that she kisses her mother's cheek sweetly. Naturally, her father is jealous, so she has to kiss him as well. Oh, I'm so happy to see her so loved. But I can still smell trouble. I hope this visit goes well. When the adults are left alone, Jenna admits that the reason she is on Leslie's side today is because the lady has bribed her with gifts. Serene is especially upset that he did not receive one. On a more serious matter, the Duchess is suspicious about the whole visiting thing. She orders that at least 10 of the knights escort Leslie during the visit, especially since the rest of the family will arrive on the very day of the candidacy exam. Suddenly, Leslie enters carrying gifts with her. Her father is delighted like a child when he receives a brooch from his beloved daughter. As for her mother, she is happy to get a beautiful feather pen, promising to use it well. Later on, Serene is walking Leslie to her room. She asks him why, unlike her brothers, he instantly accepts her. He tells her that he used to live in an orphanage run by an awful man, so he can relate to her experience to an extent. He then carries his daughter in his arms, marveling just how brave she is. He even contemplates punishing his sons for opposing Leslie before. Cyrene tells her that he has always wanted a daughter. So how can Cyrene turn Leslie away when he has been waiting for a daughter for a long time? He swears that the Sperado will fall on their own, but he refuses to leave them alone. However, he wants his daughter to only focus on making her life here happier. A few days later, Leslie is on her way to the Shinlif temple. Her knights suggest that they wait for the Tessin Trua knights before they go to Imroa's restaurant, but she insists on going there first, claiming that it is only an ordinary restaurant. No! I have a bad feeling about this! When she meets Imroa, she notices that the woman looks tired, but Imroa assures her that it's because of the baby. They enter the restaurant called Leah, named after Imroa's daughter. Leslie is quite uncomfortable because of the fire in the fireplace, as well as the fact that all the windows are blocked off. Imroa serves her a bowl of meat stew, and Leslie gushes at how delicious it looks. However, her knights insist on using magic to detect any poison before she can eat. Leslie takes offense on Imroa's behalf, claiming that she's her friend. She orders them to apologize and to leave once there's no poison detected from the stew. The two knights have no choice but to obey. She apologizes to Imroa, but the woman swears that it's fine. She then gives Leslie a charm bracelet, claiming that it's a good luck charm. As Imroa is showing Medel how to untie the bracelet using some ribbons, Leslie is feeling uneasy due to how heavy the bracelet seems to be. She wants to take it off. Leslie convinces herself that it is fine, thinking that Imroa got the bracelet especially for her. She then tells Medel to get the gifts she has prepared for Imroa in the carriage. Medel steps outside to call one of the knights to stay with Leslie, since she has to look for the gifts and mail the letters as well. When Leslie and Imroa are left alone, Imroa begins acting strange. She begins talking about how she should have forgotten about the bread and jam. When she faces Leslie, there are tears in her eyes and she apologizes to her. To Leslie's horror, Imroa locks the door, preventing the guards from entering. Oh no, I knew it! You shouldn't have trusted easily! Imroa grabs her, apologizing profusely. She tells her that her husband sold her baby, and that's why she's doing this. However, Leslie refuses to end like this, so she bites Imroa's hand. She manages to get away, but Imroa hugs her. To her horror, a black fire rages behind her. This is Marquess Sperado's doing. She's being sacrificed once again. Leslie is trembling in fear, but then she hears Imroa mumbling about her baby. Leslie recalls how she is the daughter of Salvatore and no fire scares her anymore. Imroa wants her to die with her, for someone has promised her that her baby will live if both she and Leslie perish in the fire. However, Leslie is determined to survive, knowing that her family will be heartbroken. She pushes Imroa away and runs towards one of the windows. She tries to use her powers, but it's not working. How can this happen? The fire is roaring around her, and the ends of her dress catch on fire. To her surprise, someone has doused the fire with water. It's Imroa. She grabs her arm, so she struggles to get away once again. But then Imroa leads her to a small entrance down the cellar. Imroa tells her to go inside, for the fire will not reach her there. Leslie refuses to believe her. Why the sudden change of heart? Imroa, still crying, answers that she is a mother too, and even though she wants her baby to live, she doesn't want to harm someone else's precious daughter. Even though it is shameless for her, she asks Leslie to save her daughter. All she wants is for her daughter to be safe. Leslie promises that she will save Leah no matter what. Imroa hurries her inside the cellar, but before she can do so, the roof collapses. Imroa covers her with her own body. She tells Leslie to get inside, but the debris is weighing down on the door. In the nick of time, a loud crash is heard, caused by a magnificent sword. Duchess Azela has arrived to save her daughter. Some distance from the fire, the Holy Knights are on their way to meet Leslie when a man hurriedly informs them of the fire at a local restaurant. When Conrad arrives, the place is in chaos. Medell approaches him, telling him where Leslie is. Conrad heals her, and she asks him to save Leslie, who is terrified of fire. One of the masked men instantly stops him when he tries to approach the restaurant. He tries to fight him off. That is when Sirene arrives, asking for his help. He wants him to look for Sperado, knowing that he's probably just hiding somewhere. He assures Conrad that his wife is already inside to save Leslie. Leslie can't believe that her mother is here. When her mother carries her in her arms, Leslie finally feels safe. The Duchess tells her not to close her eyes no matter what. Leslie then sees Emroa lying on the ground. Despite her mother's apprehension, she asks her to save Emroa as well. She explains that the woman actually tried to save her. When they manage to get out, Leslie's vision turns dark. Meanwhile, Marquess Sperado is despairing that the plan did not work. He used pieces of the chain in those charm bracelets after all, but still, it wasn't enough. He, along with Ellie, are caught by Conrad as they try to escape the scene. They try to talk their way out of it. Ellie even tries to use her oh-so-precious tears to manipulate him, but Conrad is not having any of their lies. He deems the Marquise as someone worse than an animal for hurting his own child. Later on, Leslie finally awakens after some time. She looks for her mother and learns that she, along with the Emperor, is dealing with the Marquise. Leslie instantly feels guilty, especially since Medell even got hurt. Medell assures her that it's not her fault and that Conrad already healed her. Her maid suggests meeting Conrad, but she wants to see Sir Leso and Sir Bont first. When she sees the knights, she is surprised to see them being disciplined by her father. She rushes to stop him, claiming that what happened was because of her and that they are not at fault. With tears in her eyes, she bows before the knights, apologizing for what she did. Sir Leso tells her that what happened was because of their lack of judgment. They were overconfident because of their reputation. The knights apologize to her in turn, claiming that they should have protected her better. Sirene interrupts them, saying that both Leslie and the knights played a part in it. He tells his daughter that she has to learn from her experience. Every once in a while, everyone gets betrayed. Azalea in him has experienced betrayal before as well. Sometimes people who you trust can turn around and betray you. What's important is that you not be betrayed a second time. It is important to learn how to judge people. That's true. You should always be careful, dear Leslie. Later on, Leslie learns from Medell how her parents found out that she was in danger. Her old nanny was actually the one who informed them. Rue even lies about how she is Leslie's favorite person. Leslie clenches her hands in anger, swearing that she'll throw her out once she gets back. She then learns that Marquis Sperado and Ellie are now in the underground prison. Ha! They truly got what they deserved. Leslie insists on seeing them, but then Conrad interrupts their conversation, informing her that the Marquise and Ellie are no longer there since the Emperor is seeing them now for their final plea. Leslie notices a scar on Conrad's face, but he assures her that it'll get better soon. Leslie then asks Medell to get the gift she has prepared. She hands Conrad the handkerchief she has embroidered. She is embarrassed by her handiwork, but Conrad swears that he loves it and that he'll cherish it. Meanwhile, the Marquise and Ellie are delivering their final plea. Unsurprisingly, Ellie betrays her father. She pretends that she's being manipulated as well and that she is innocent of all his crimes. The Duchess can only smirk as she listens to all the lies being spouted on the spot. The Marquise is so angered by his daughter's betrayal that he tries to attack her. That moment is their last plea before the Emperor. At a lodge near the temple, the Duke informs Leslie of what happened to her former family. The Marquise lost his land and is now a commoner. He will be sent to the La Seyton prison in the south. As for Ellie, she will remain in the capital since her name has already been submitted to the Arabella candidates list. As long as she remains a candidate, her punishment is suspended for 4 years. Leslie hugs her mother, and the Duchess apologizes for not being able to end everything. She also learns that her mother sent Rue to the ghost cabin, where she'll be living there like a ghost for the rest of her life with no escape. As for Emroa, she and her baby are exiled to a nearby kingdom. The Duchess ensured that she was sent to a small country where it was warm and nice. Leslie thanks her mother for saving her. She then asks her if she can sleep with her, fearing the nightmares to come. A little while later, Leslie visits Ellie in prison where she is throwing a tantrum for her filthy state. Ellie still acts like a brat, blaming Leslie for everything that's happened. Leslie points out just how horrible Ellie's condition is now. She then asks if Ellie is even more embarrassed by this than trying to harm her own sister. Ellie begins to act hysterically, claiming that she still has a chance and she'll become Arabella. Leslie tells her she can try, but questions how she can possibly pass when she is so ignorant. She swears that her knowledge no longer belongs to Ellie. Later on, Ellie has to take the exam, and she is frustrated that she has to do this. She doesn't even know the divine language. But then she notices that the test is written in the imperial language. The high priest is looking at her conspiratorially, and she instantly knows what to do. A week later, the Duchess is shocked that Ellie passed. Jenna knows that the Flower of Rhonda played a trick. It is clear that she wants to use Ellie. What's worse is that the marquess escaped while being transported to Lassitone. The Duchess can only order a pursuit squad and tighten the security in the manor, no matter the cost. The Salvatores are currently enjoying a wonderful spring season. 4 years later, Leslie welcomes another spring season at the Duchess's palace, awaiting her brother's return. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!